Finally, we can set aside our pitchforks and torches, and the wailing and gnashing of teeth can subside, because today INNOCN sent me one of the most beautiful looking displays I've ever seen. That's right, today we're going to be taking a look at one of the only OLED glossy monitors available. But before you start hulking out and smashing the buy button, does this monitor actually perform well? And is it good for gaming? Well, let's go ahead and find out. First, starting off with the specs. Now, what we're looking at here is a 1920 by 1080 60 Hz 13.3-inch display with an aspect ratio of 16:9. It is OLED, has a PPI of 166 and a reported contrast ratio of 100,000 to 1. So I know there's a couple things about those specs that maybe some people won't be super enthused by, but I'm telling you guys, you're going to be very shocked. And also, I think some of these specs undersell what the capabilities truly are. Now, starting off with the stand, it actually does have a nice little metal stand here that does everything you need it to do for a monitor like this. However, unfortunately, it does not have base mount support, so I would love to see that in a future model. And in terms of ports, it has 2 USB-Cs and 1 mini HDMI, and all of this comes in at an incredible $150. That's right, it's just $150 for a glossy, beautiful OLED display. But now that we know all that, sounds great, but once we get out the torture devices, does it actually look good? Well, starting off with the color, taking a look at the white point and the accuracy here, we can see that it is actually fairly close to 6500K out of the box. However, it does have way too much green in it and comes in with a delta E of 11.5. Now, thankfully, I was able to get it to 6491K, so nearly that perfect 6500K, and a delta E of just 0.8, so very good there. And if you want access to all of my calibrations and ICC profiles, I will have them linked for not only this monitor, but everything I review in my Patreon in the description below. And I was also able to get it nearly 30% brighter, so you guys are definitely going to want to go ahead and check out those settings if you do choose to purchase this monitor. Now, speaking of color, let's go ahead and take a look at the gamut. Here I was absolutely shocked and nearly threw my table across the room. In terms of the coverage, sRGB had 100%, 98% Adobe RGB, and 97.4% DCI P3. So very, very impressive stuff there. In terms of the volume, it gets even better. 174.3% sRGB, 120.1% Adobe RGB, and 123.4% DCI P3. So this is an absolutely fantastic monitor if you're going to be doing professional work. But what about its brightness? Well, here once again it impresses, as if we take a look at the 10% window, not anything too crazy here, 383 nits, so it is on the lower end in this section. However, when we take a look at the 100% window, here's where you're going to go cross-eyed and start drooling, because the INNOCN 13K1F is actually bringing in an incredible 384 nits in a 100% window. That is far above the other OLEDs that I've tested, and very, very good, honestly, for any display, let alone an OLED. And in terms of gaming brightness, taking a look at Battlefield 1, once again, it does pretty good here, 371 nits, which does put it at a pretty good brightness for an OLED, but it doesn't get quite as bright in terms of peak brightness as stuff like an S95B or even an LG C1. So overall, the brightness is pretty good, but it's definitely going to be a strong point when it comes to a larger window size. Now, in terms of the contrast ratio, I actually measured this to be infinite, so I'm not even going to show you a chart. It's absolutely perfect, and the minimum brightness is 0.00. Now, in terms of overclocking, yes, you can overclock this monitor. I got it up to 75 Hertz. However, unfortunately, it did seem to be suffering from some sort of frame skipping. So in order to get that working properly, you might have to tinker around with it, and I'm not sure if you even can. So you're probably going to be locked to 60 Hertz. Now, in terms of latency, here's where things really look not so great. I actually got 78.3 milliseconds of latency, and I could not believe my eyes. That is far and away the worst latency I have ever seen in any display I've tested thus far. So I'm not entirely sure what's causing it. I tried testing it multiple times with different cables even, so that I made sure that everything was correct. And yes, it is a very slow display. However, in terms of power draw, it's turning it around. Actually, at a 100% full widescreen window, it only drew around 10 watts, which is very, very impressive, especially for an OLED display. As you can see, many other displays that can't even reach that level of 100% brightness are drawing far more power. And in terms of the UFO test here, you can see OLED is doing a fantastic job once again. Even at 60 Hertz, you can see there's basically no ghosting whatsoever. Now the image itself is a little bit blurry, however, this would be a lot better if it had a higher refresh rate. So overall, very good and looks very clear in motion, especially for a 60 Hertz display. But what about the finish? Well, here's where things get even better. This is probably the best finish I've ever seen on any display. It's almost like looking through a perfect glass window straight into the monitor. Now, of course, this does mean you will get an increase in reflections, as the anti-reflective treatment that it has is probably the weakest I've seen of any display. However, it also means you're getting the most vibrant and clear picture of any display as well. In fact, I would say this has a more vibrant and punchy picture than even the S95B at times. And the S95B, do keep in mind, is quantum dot OLED and can get much brighter in terms of its peak brightness. So that is very impressive. In terms of viewing angles, it's OLED, so it's absolutely fantastic. And in terms of uniformity, I saw no real visible issues. So what's my conclusion? Should you buy this monitor? Well, I think it depends on what camp you're in. If you're looking for a gaming monitor, obviously with it being 60 Hertz and not having very good latency, yes, you should not be using this for gaming. However, if you just need a second monitor or you're using it for work, this is an absolutely must buy, like near perfect display for that type of situation, especially considering the low price of $150. In fact, this is going to be my go-to recommendation for secondary displays. And if you're using a second monitor like an LCD or something, get rid of that thing right now and go into my description and purchase this thing at its current reduced price of $150, 40% off. This is a must buy, guys. This is a perfect solution for a second display if you're not looking to take up too much room on your desk. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, RUPRO has you covered with their RUPRO 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes ranging from 3 to 165 feet, and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K at 60 FPS or 4K at 120 FPS HDR10 video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports eARC. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out RUPRO on Amazon today.